They were afraid, of course. I recently married this man. When we were creating this house, I thought, oh my God, your country really doesn't want me there. In 1986, Linda Kozlowski filmed with real crocodiles and stayed in tents from a former uranium mine. Across the set, guards with guns stood in trees. She became well known as a result of the film, but her personal life suffered as well. To be with her, her co-star left his wife and 5 children behind. She received death threats daily and was disliked in Australia. The worst part, however, arrived. After 23 years of marriage, she discovered something that completely altered her life. She currently resides in Morocco, is a Muslim, and gives wealthy people tours. Why? The true cause will surprise you. On January 7, 1958, Lena Kozlowski was born in Fairfield, Connecticut. After the war, members of her family fled Poland in search of better opportunities in the United States. To blend in, they altered their names from Helen and Stanisław to Helen and Stanley. Despite their limited resources, they put a lot of effort into improving their daughter's life. America meant opportunities and safety to them. It turned into the location where Linda sought and achieved notoriety. Her final year at Andrew Ward High School was that one. Even in those days, when she participated in school plays, people could see how talented she was. She led. She did not merely act. She occasionally remembered the entire book by heart in addition to her lines. When things went wrong, she stepped in to aid others. Her portrayal of Emily in Our Town was praised by locals. Some claimed she brought them to tears. And it is not a common occurrence in high school concerts. Everyone who saw Linda, however, could see that she was different. She did more than just that. She was one of the few who was accepted to the Juilliard School in New York City. There aren't even a dozen. Linda simultaneously performed opera music and acted. Most pupils only complete one. That was not the case. She had to work long hours, stay busy, and sleep little in order to accomplish it. Nevertheless, she did it. Her ability to transition from delivering a dramatic monologue to singing an Italian aria was praised by her teachers. Despite her seriousness and intensity, people could sense she was working on something bigger. She began performing professionally on stage at the age of 23 in 1981. She was cast in a piece called How It All Began. The play's major themes of immigration and identity resonated deeply with her. Out of almost 200 ladies that tried out, Linda was chosen for the role. Critics listened. Some referred to her as a surprise. It was a review that casting directors remember, not simply a good one. For her, this was the start of everything, not simply a fantastic show. Death of a Salesman was the next film. She was given a minor role in a major production in 1984. Broadway saw the revival of an old Arthur Miller play, and it was crowded with celebrities. Linda portrayed the role of Miss Forsythe. She stood out even though it wasn't the lead part. The New York Times praised her for giving the role new vitality. She gained not only admiration in the theater, but also recognition in Hollywood as a result of her performance. Then another opportunity beckoned. Actors were needed for an odd Australian movie in 1985. It was called Crocodile Dundee. Put an intelligent, curious American woman in perilous situations with a tough Australian man. That was its simple concept. The team preferred a fresh player over a well-known one. Linda gave it a shot. She wasn't well recognized, but she had done theatrical and TV work. When she read her lines alongside Paul Hogan, it clicked, even though dozens of other women were vying for the role. Their connection just happened. It wasn't forced. The part went to her. A $500,000 deal for 3 films was included. For someone who hasn't used a screen much, that was a big thing. But she didn't simply show up and accept the money. She prepared herself. She picked up some Australian lingo. She gained knowledge of the community. She wished for Sue Charlton to feel authentic rather than like a fake. The comedy, the romance, and the charm all worked well in the beginning of filming. Everything came together. Crocodile Dundee's production was as insane as the film itself. One of the bloodiest scenes was a river attack in Australia's Northern Territory. At least on screen, a massive crocodile nearly pulled Linda Kozlowski, who played Sue Charlton, into the sea. Behind the scenes, there was more than just playing. Real crocodiles were swimming beside the crew the entire time, but they employed a synthetic crocodile for close-ups. In the trees were armed team members, prepared to use their weapons in the event that a real croc approached too closely. Kakadu National Park, which is not at all like a movie set, is where the film was filmed. Neither trailers nor hotels were present. The crew and players stayed in huts that had been abandoned by uranium workers. Every take seemed like a gamble. The terror depicted on the TV wasn't a fabrication. It was equally tense behind the scenes. The film's actor and co-writer, Paul Hogan, was experiencing a mental collapse. In 1958, he married Nolene Edwards, and the two of them had 5 children. However, their marriage was barely surviving when the film was shot in 1985. They divorced in 1981, but shortly after, they remarried. They were preparing for a second, highly visible breakup. Hogan and Linda Kozlowski were fighting in the midst of all that. They actually did get along on screen. It was so real, in fact, that rumors started to circulate. Kozlowski was quickly referred to as a home wrecker by the Australian media. Afterwards, Hogan admitted, "I'm not a great husband. I'm all right in the morning." He witnessed his life unravel at that moment. The emotion that seeped into his performance wasn't fake. At least in our memory, one sequence nearly didn't make it into the film. The scene where Mick Dundee explains, "That's not a knife, that's a knife," is still remembered, but it was nearly destroyed by laughing. Linda Kozlowski couldn't take that any longer. She laughed aloud each time because Hogan's delivery of the phrase was so flawless and dry. 47 attempts were necessary to get it correctly. 47. Filming on a crowded New York street was challenging enough, but this became a humorous routine. The gang was also unable to maintain unity. Somehow, though, that rage became magic. In the history of film, that sequence has been discussed extensively. And that chuckle, which was omitted from the final cut, revealed more about the relationship between the two performers. The award scene was illuminated by that link as well as the screen. In 1987, Lena Kozlowski received a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress. It was her first major motion picture. Some well-known Hollywood figures, including Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio and Diane Weist, were in the running. Nobody anticipated that she would be among them. She was still relatively unknown to most people, but she was demonstrating that up-and-coming talent could rival established stars by doing interviews and strolling the red carpet. These kinds of stories are popular in Hollywood, but this one originated from an Australian film that nobody anticipated would be a major success. However, it did. At the box office, Crocodile Dundee was a big hit. With just $8 to spend, $8 million, it generated over $328 million globally. It earned $22 million, making it the second highest grossing film of 1986, and it topped the U.S. box office for 9 consecutive weeks. The only film to earn more money was Top Gun. Thus, one of the highest grossing new performers of the entire decade was Linda Kozlowski, thanks to her debut performance. For someone who has only been sleeping in mine huts for a few months, that's quite impressive. Her job changed as a result of the film's success. It placed her on the historical map of popular culture. Her role in one of the most well-known comedies ever is still a high standard that few newcomers have ever met, and it seemed like her face was everywhere. Crocodile Dundee, which was released in 1986, made Paul Hogan a global celebrity. In Australia, he was already well known. Behind the scenes, however, something far more intimate was happening. While filming the film, Hogan fell in love with his American co-star Linda Kozlowski. The timing couldn't have been worse. Evidence of his marriage to his longtime wife, Nolene Edwards, was still present. This was no ordinary wedding. Nolene and Hogan were married in 1958, divorced in 1981, and remarried in 1982. Before their final breakup in 1989, they had been together for over 30 years and had 5 children. When Hogan filed for divorce a second time, people began to take notice. It was no longer merely a private split. Suddenly, everyone was watching Crocodile Dundee since it was so well liked. Many questioned whether Kozlowski was the cause of the divorce. Despite the fact that she was about 20 years younger than him, they shared a lot of similarities. The fact that both Hogan and Kozlowski claimed the relationship started after his marriage was already failing was too obvious to ignore. Fans were taken aback. Although he was cheating on his wife with a younger Hollywood starlet, Hogan was still regarded as a wonderful family man. The media gave the story a lot of coverage. The Outback Affair was the name given to it in Australian newspapers. It made headlines in Los Angeles and Sydney. Paparazzi followed them everywhere. When they flew, where they slept, and even set up camp outside their homes, reporters documented it. The more they attempted to be quiet, the louder the talk about them became. Hogan was referred to as an adversary of the Australian ideal, while Kozlowski was viewed as the embodiment of all that locals disliked about Western entertainment. They did more than only converse. Kozlowski started receiving hate mail and even death threats. Anger-filled followers dubbed her the homewrecker. She was held accountable for ruining a family that everyone adored and a lovely 23-year marriage. She was despised by many individuals shortly after she rose to fame. While Nolene, Hogan's ex-wife, was perceived as the traumatized mother of 5 who was raising the children alone, she stopped attending public events and hired security to protect herself. After many people sympathized with her, Kozlowski became irate. Rumor was not the only aspect of the narrative. It was now risky. For over a year, these 2 individuals attempted to conceal everything. They checked in using false identities after meeting covertly in hotel rooms. They arrived and departed at different times, and they even exchanged coded letters with one another. Few people were aware of what was happening. That was a difficult way to live. The stress, the falsehoods, and the mistrust all became too much. In the end, the truth was revealed. By then, Hogan's marriage was ended. His reputation had been permanently altered. Crocodile Dundee 2 became an international sensation as soon as it was released in May 1988. Despite only costing $14 million to produce, it brought in over $239 million worldwide. The return of Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski to television drew enormous audiences worldwide. Linda received a large raise this time. She was paid 240% more for the first film. She earned $1. The next one will cost $2 million. Even if it sounds like a victory, Paul Hogan received a higher salary. In addition to being the lead, he contributed to the script. The pay discrepancy was still difficult to overlook. The sequel surpassed sales records in Australia, earning $24.9 million, or almost $60 million today. In the U.S., it began at $24.5 million throughout the Memorial Day weekend. That was the funniest start ever at the time. It was the 5th most successful film of 1988 because of how much money it made. Despite being extremely successful, Linda was not treated equally in Hollywood despite her global fame. Many suggestions were made after the film's success, but there was a catch. They all had the same appearance. There were no stars or deeply complex characters, and Linda only received roles like girlfriend or cute sidekick, simply attractive to look at next to a humorous man. Her parts appeared in the well-known films Ghost, Pretty Woman, and Basic Instinct. Over $463 million was made by Pretty Woman. Sharon Stone is well known to many thanks to the film Basic Instinct. But Linda said no. She wanted to be more than just a lovely face on film. The company's employees were taken aback. Who declined such a job? Linda had different plans. She was prepared for significant roles. She aspired to be recognized for more than her appearance. Pass the ammo was the next game. The plan was for something else. A dark comedy featuring Bill Paxton is presented. It was a bold attempt at televangelism and cost $8 million. However, everything went terribly wrong. It only brought in $169,000. The loss exceeded $7 million. The film was over in an instant. Almost immediately, it was removed from theaters. It was a terrible thing for Linda. After a huge hit, she was ecstatic, but then she was in one of the worst films of the year. The business world did not benefit from it. It was she who was blamed, not the script or the director. Even fewer jobs were available. Linda Kozlowski was more than just a gorgeous face on television and film in real life. She attended Juilliard as a student. She performed on Broadway. She had a great deal of experience and expertise. But Hollywood didn't give a damn. Paul Hogan's girlfriend was the only person they saw. It was not only her role in the film, it was also her real-life name. It was more difficult for her to break out from the norm after they were married in 1990. Even when she returned to Los Angeles in 2001 for Crocodile Dundee, it seemed as though she was trapped in the past. No matter what else she did, it was irrelevant. What she discovered was irrelevant. Only the American female was seen to everyone in the Australian entertainment. By 1989, she had had enough. She declared to her agent that she was prepared to depart. She was tired of Hollywood treating her as though she had nothing more to offer, the scripts, and being marginalized. The box office performance of her previous film was poor. She had witnessed other actresses excel in roles that she declined. In addition, she continued to be viewed as a supporting character in her own career. It shattered my heart, not just made me irritated. She was prepared to forego wealth and notoriety in order to escape the trap. Being a mother wasn't easy for Linda Kozlowski. After marrying Paul Hogan, she struggled to conceive for nearly 8 years. It was a difficult period. At work, she felt stuck, mentally exhausted, and frustrated. In addition, she feared that she would never be able to conceive. When she eventually gave birth to their son, Chance, in 1998, she was already 40 years old. It didn't seem conceivable. She was on the verge of giving up. After a few years, she spoke about how difficult those years were for her in an interview. She even said that the only thing on her mind throughout her last 2 acting gigs was having a child, which made them awful. Her life was consumed by her intense desire for it. For both of them, Chance's birth felt like the beginning of a new life. She claimed that at 43, she had at last discovered serenity. "I've got a baby, I'm happy, and I'm content," she said. She achieved all of her goals. Happiness, however, was insufficient to improve the situation. It was even more obvious how different she was from Hogan when Chance arrived. Linda started to sense the need for independence. Hogan enjoyed living in peace with his family. They were becoming estranged despite their love for their son. Chance would become the focus of news articles years later. According to reports, despite being in his mid-20s, he appeared untidy. Everyone was reminded by Hogan's anxious expression that the altercations continued behind closed doors even after the cameras had stopped recording. In addition, Linda's career as a performer was struggling. Things took a turn for the worse after her big break, Crocodile Dundee. In 1990, she collaborated with Hogan once more on the film Almost an Angel. It did not go well. The film was poorly received by fans, and reviews were severe. That review hurt. Roger Ebert described her acting as wooden and void of inspiration. She was once considered a rising star. That spotlight was fading fast. Over time, the parts became smaller and more affordable. The Neighbor and Backstreet Justice were the two. In 1994, both were released. She concluded by calling them foolish. She was unwilling to perform them. She claimed that she developed an ulcer as a result of the extreme stress of producing those kinds of films. She believed that only she was concerned about performing well. She was exhausted from being in such a setting. At home, it wasn't any better either. She and Hogan were constantly traveling between Los Angeles and Australia. Hogan's tax issues were a contributing factor, but Linda never felt at home or at ease as a result. Everything seemed fleeting. In October 2013, 23 years after their marriage, Lena Kozlowski filed for divorce from Paul Hogan. Fans were taken aback. There was nothing like these combination. While filming Crocodile Dundee, they fell in love and remained together for a long time. They had been regarded as one of the few really happy couples in Hollywood. No significant events or negative news reports occurred. Behind the placid exterior, however, things were unraveling. According to Linda, they have unsolvable issues. Most folks didn't understand that phrase. However, it meant that things were gradually changing for them. Waiting for him to leave his previous life grew tiresome. The distance wears us out emotionally and physically. Paul continued to have ties to Australia. Linda had other ideas. When court documents were released, the fissures were more visible. Paul Hogan smoked 2 packs a day. Linda had transformed her life into a healthier and cleaner one. The scent of smoke permeated both their home and their arguments. Paul was also alleged to have been drinking more. Chance, their teenage son, was in the heart of their more heated arguments. It was a tense, quiet house where people used to recite lines and giggle. Between them were barriers that grew higher each year. These weren't merely routines. When the specifics of the arrangement were revealed, more people gave each other amusing looks. In return for the $6,250,000, Linda was required to forfeit both husband support and child support. At the time, Chance was just 15 years old. Most well-known divorces last a long period because of these factors. This one didn't, though. Linda wanted to get out of there immediately. According to some, she had finished everything. Others believed that after decades of sacrificing her freedom, she was reclaiming it. No matter what, she grabbed the lump cash and went. In the ensuing discussions, Linda was forthright. There was no betrayal or scandal that was hidden. Just two individuals growing farther distant. "We've lived together more than as husband and wife," she stated. He enjoyed his days off in Australia. She desired to experiment. Their conversations had devolved into brief exchanges about creating the food list or picking up the kids from school. The romance that started on a film set has gradually waned. It was not detonating. It was slow and silent. Finally, the split was completed on July 23, 2014. It was a significant date. They were married on May 5, 1990, and it has been 24 years and 2 months since then. The unanimity was frightening. A straight path from beginning to end. They had spent nearly 25 years together. Brought up a child. They were on the same stage. Even powerful stories, however, can have a quiet, gentle ending. The forms were completed. The couple's marriage had ended. However, Linda's story did not finish there. Less than a year later, she was navigating Marrakesh's bustling marketplaces. She assumed it was merely a vacation in 2015. At that point, she met Molly Hafi Baba, a delightful Moroccan tour guide with extensive knowledge of his nation's history. The connection was immediately made. Together, they conversed, laughed, and navigated the maze-like streets of the city. It resembled something from a motion picture. Linda was 57. She was starting a new book after finishing the last one. By 2017, the situation had shifted much further. At the vibrant Moroccan wedding of Linda and Baba, more than 200 guests attended. She converted to Islam and adopted the Arabic name Layla. She was cooking Moroccan food, studying Arabic, and wearing traditional kaftans. The 3-day event had cuisine, music, and color. According to Linda, it felt like a fresh start. It was obvious she had given up on Hollywood. Then came the next leap. Together, they founded Dream My Destiny, an upscale tour operator. High-end American travel options in Morocco included dinners with Berber families, balloon excursions over the Atlas Mountains, and private riads. The business performed admirably. Over 500 people came through in just 2 years. In 2020, they earned almost $2 million. Linda personally invited several of the guests. Her new life was what made the dream come true, even though her previous popularity contributed. In 2018, she sold her Venice Beach apartment to make the relocation possible. The selling price was $1.8 million. She had spent years in that bright home in California. But the Pacific was over for her. She utilized the funds to purchase a riad in the Medina, Marrakesh's historic district. Room by room, she and Baba patched it up. It became their home and was filled with art, stories, and antiques. The red carpets and plots had vanished. Candles, spices, and a more leisurely pace of life took their place. Linda Kozlowski did not simply quit Hollywood. She decided to get out of it. She decided on something more personal and reflective after years of being the center of attention. She currently resides in Marrakesh and Los Angeles. It is evident that Marrakesh has become her second home, even though she is still an American citizen. When she wakes up in the morning, she can hear the call to prayer on the streets. In the gardens of Monera, she runs past rows of ancient olive trees. Breakfast consists of juicy local fruit, sweet amalou, fresh bread, and mint tea. It's easy yet healthful. Like the rhythm of the city, her days pass. She navigates crowded souks, manually selects spices, converses with vendors, and searches for eateries, riads, and peaceful areas that are often overlooked by tourists. She is traveling for more than just fun. She's gathering. She and her husband, Mule Hafi Baba, a well-known neighborhood guide, own a business called Dream My Destiny. They provide visitors a closer-up look at Morocco. At night, it's either a welcoming cafe where you can take in the city lights and the warm air, or a hammam spa. Everything seems to fit together even though she lives in two distinct worlds. Her former life persisted. All it did was alter form. Her story still includes Paul Hogan, who played her on-screen sidekick and later married her. They married in 1990 because they got along so well on Crocodile Dundee. For more than 20 years, they shared a home, brought up a kid, and created memories. When they parted ways in 2014, everything was okay. Linda accepted the $6.25 million settlement, but they refused to accept more assistance. She only wanted a fresh start and to split custody of their kid Chance. They had no official relationship. Chance is now a young man who connects two very different lives: his mother's new existence in Morocco and California, and his father's connections to Australia. Paul and Lena remained close. He even expressed his happiness to her about her marriage to Molly and the expansion of her business. There is only respect in public, no drama. They remained friends after a split, which is uncommon in this area. Linda doesn't apologize. She has no question as to why she left the film industry following the release of Crocodile Dundee in 2001. She was requested to appear in schlocky films that were intended for video viewing. They were detrimental to her. She claims that they caused her so much pain that she developed ulcers. It made no difference. She was tired of superficial relationships and a company that prioritized profits before changing the world. Then she walked away. I'm simply plain. I'm not upset. She put a lot of effort into raising Chance, saying, "It was the best choice I've ever made." She had a successful career outside of photo shoots and award events. She currently guides visitors across Morocco, where she learns about the local way of life and appreciates the small pleasures. She has taught people how to abandon things that no longer serve them, as well as how to start again. In her story, it's not about letting fame go. You must locate a superior option.